Our story now out of southern Montana. That is where a rare attack by a river otter injured three women floating on inner tubes. One of those victims seriously injured and had to be flown to a hospital. This all happened on a remote stretch of the Jefferson River. Captain Adam Pankratz with the Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks joins us now live to talk a little bit more about all of this. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
So first off, can you just kind of break down for me exactly what played out here? What happened?
So back on August 3rd, three adult females set out to float the Jefferson River. So they launched from one of our fishing access sites on inner tubes and began to float the river. A couple hours into their float, sometime after 8 p.m., they started getting attacked, bites and scratches to their submerged portions of their body. So legs that are hanging in the water off the inner tubes. They immediately attempted to get to shore. One of the females fell into the water from her inner tube, and while she was swimming to the shore, an otter attacked her head. She got separated from her party on the remote side of the river, away from the roadway. And then one of the members of the floating party called 911. The local Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, Montana Highway Patrol, Jefferson Valley Ambulance, and Fish, Wildlife, and Parks wardens responded with assistance of a local rancher that kind of knew the area and how to get to the remote portion of the river. One of the troopers that arrived on scene, aware that the stranded female was severely injured, she grabbed a medical kit and swam across the river and provided first aid to the injured person on the other side of the river. Due to her injuries, a helicopter was called, which transported the severely injured victim to the hospital.
When you hear that call, you hear that there's been an otter attack where these three women are injured, at least one of them pretty seriously. What goes through your mind to hear that? Because these attacks, I imagine, are very, very rare.
They are rare. The first thing that goes through our head is empathy for the victims, wanting to make sure that we can get to them right away, get them the help, medical attention they need, and then prevent any further threats to public safety if there's anyone else still on the water, river when this is going on. So making sure we're stopping whatever is happening and getting medical attention.
Does it make it any tougher to treat somebody for an injury like this and know exactly what injuries they have when they are attacks that are fairly rare overall? They don't happen that often.
Yeah, in the field, you're trying to assess what happened. You have a description for people. Sometimes they don't know what happened. They didn't see the wild animal that maybe bit or scratched them. It happened suddenly. So part of what you're trying to do while assessing their injuries, getting them the medical attention, is figuring out what kind of wild animal was involved, and then what we need to do again to make sure that further people aren't in danger.
What might cause an otter to attack? Is there any way to know that right now? Maybe not necessarily about this specific situation, but in general, as we mentioned, those attacks are fairly rare. So what would cause an otter to actually attack a human?
Like many other wild animals, they can be defensive. And typically wild animals like otters are defensive of young, protecting their young, protecting themselves, and protecting food sources. We see it with bears, we see it with otters, we see it with moose. Those are typically when a defensive attack occurs. Most of these attacks are not predatory. It's not an animal hunting a human or identifying a human as food. It's the human got too close to me, I'm scared, and my gut or my instinct tells me to attack to get it away from me. And typically that's what we see is when people get too close to wild animals, it can result in an attack.
And I'm not sure if you can speak to this, but as far as the different types of otters, we're talking, I believe, about a river otter here. How is that different? Do you tend to see, I guess, the rare attacks that do happen, are they usually river otters? What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, in Montana, the otter we have is the northern river otter. There's multiple different species around the world, but in North America, most of them are the northern river otter. They're common in the western 2/3 of Montana. You'll see them in the Pacific Northwest around the Great Lakes, the Mississippi area, and southeast United States. They're common in rivers, lakes, reservoirs, some wetlands and such. They're mostly nocturnal, but they can be very active in the dawn and dusk time period. And the best advice is just keep your distance. It's when close to them, you just want to pay attention to where you are and not get too close.
And so are there certain areas of the country, I guess, where we tend to see more otters? As you mentioned, the river otter is one that is pretty common there in Montana specifically. Is there a portion of the country that has more otters than not, I guess?
Yeah, I'm not aware of their population dynamics. Get away from populated areas and there's going to be more wild animals. Typically, humans tend to displace wildlife. And so where there's a lot of humans, there's less wildlife. And so as you get to remote portions and stretches of rivers and lakes, there's a chance that the density of wild animals is higher and your chance of encounter can increase.
Tell me about the area, if you can, where this attack actually happened, because as we mentioned, they were kind of on the river there. Is that a remote area? Tell me what that area is like.
Yeah, it's a ways out of population centers, but it's not necessarily remote as in it's hard to get to. There's a paved highway that goes along the river. There are fishing access sites, which are boat launches, where you can access the river. There's one of our bigger state parks that butts up against the river. There's very close to the attack site, Lewis and Clark Cavern State Park. It's not a highly floated section of the river, particularly this time of year. As Montana sees drought and low water conditions, the recreation volume decreases on the rivers. It's just there's less water in the river. But it's a place you can get to. It's about an hour west of the city of Bozeman, which would be the next biggest city.
All right, Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and help break that down for us. Is there anything else that you want to add about all of this before I let you go?
Yeah, again, the big advice is just people keep your distance from wildlife, all wildlife in general. I know it's neat to see them. I know it's neat to get pictures of them. And it's very exciting every time I see a deer, a moose, a bear out in the wild. But the big thing that can keep you safe and others and prevent an incident like this is ensuring you keep your distance.
And it's true, it's all about safety there. Captain Adam Pankratz with Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Yep, thank you.